Hey, welcome everyone to the Inside Sport Nutrition Podcast. If you are looking and viewing at us on YouTube, yes, by the way, we do have a YouTube channel. And yes, by the way, we upload all of our podcasts on our YouTube channel. So you can find us there. If you're there, we would love for you to interact, comment below on anything that we're talking about today, because this is a little bit of a hot topic. And Dina, raise your coffee cup to me really quick.
Oh.
Let's just chink.
Chink
Cheers.
on that. Ooh, you can
Do
see all my
you-
little dribbles,
I
Bob.
do see your little dribbles. Now I have matcha. Now listeners, there's a reason why I'm introing like this. I am drinking matcha right now. Okay. I know, Dina, you are mostly a coffee drinker. So my question is, in relation to our episode that we're doing today, and listeners, I'll tell you what that is here in a second. Dina Griffin, how much butter did you put in your coffee today?
Oh, Bob. No, that was like 10 years ago. I might have dabbled, or
Oh.
like 12 years ago when I
Okay,
did a
so
little
you're
butter
not
coffee.
bulletproofing your coffee anymore with butter.
No. However, there is a little bit of fat in this coffee
Yeah. Okay.
with a half and half.
Okay, a little bit of milk, a little bit of full fat, or not full fat, I guess, but half and half,
Half and
fat.
half.
So why the heck am I bringing this up? Listeners, today we are talking about, dun, 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 the new 2025-2030 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. Yes, it's here. And yes, we weren't going to do this episode, but I did convince my lovely co-host to chat about this. And listen, here's the thing. You're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've listened to so many people give their opinions on the new dietary guidelines. Yes, we know, but you know what? We want to provide our opinions also, because we're going to come at it from a little different angle. We are sports dietitians. We are in the trenches. We work with so many different people from health, longevity, sport, you name it. So I kind of feel like, Dina, what we have to say might be pertinent for at least our wonderful listeners. Do you agree?
Well, I hope so, Bob. That's always an ongoing wish for us to come away with a few takeaways or thinking points and deciding what to do forward with the education and strategies.
Yes. Okay, a little bit of history here really quick, listeners. 1992 is when the first food guide pyramid came out. And that is where, if you remember, the base of the pyramid was 6 to 11 servings of whole grains. And then it just kind of went up. I'm not even going to reiterate that because you can Google it and look it up for yourself. But 1992, okay. And then here's what happened, Dee, which was really interesting. 2005, we had the advent of My Pyramid, which is interesting. Not the food guide pyramid, but My Pyramid. And then we had 2011. Do you remember what came in then? My Plate. So in the United States, at least, we're seeing a lot of iterations from our government in trying to, let's just say, tell us how to eat. Now, I just want to give that brief history lesson, because now we are not even, this isn't even a food guide pyramid, right? And Dee, before we hopped on, you actually asked, what do we call it these days? And I actually had to look. I was like, oh, wait, that's a good question. Oh yeah, it's not actually called the food guide pyramid, My Period, nothing like that, right? It is literally called Dietary Guidelines for Americans. So we're kind of back to step one in the naming of it, and I kind of like that because it's not a pyramid at all. It's an inverted pyramid, as we know, right? So it's a little confusing. We did not prep at all for this, listeners, meaning Dina and I did not get in cahoots and plan what we're going to say, which I kind of think is a little edgy. I kind of like that because I never know what she's going to say. She never knows what I'm going to say. So it's going to be kind of a cool episode because we're going to go back and forth. And I kind of feel like we just get to kind of talk about how we interpret these new food guide or new food dietary guidelines, pros, cons, maybe the takeaways. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
Bob.
Do you want to start with maybe how would, let's practice like we were debating, right? Not that we are debating, but you know how to debate, like you're like, okay, I'm going to give my opening statement, almost like a lawyer, attorney, like whatever, right? What's your opening statement for what you see on this new dietary guidelines? Like when you first saw it, or even now that you've digested it a little bit, pun intended, what's your opening statement? Do you have one?
Well, normally I would
Counselor?
have a little bit more time to prepare said statement.
Yeah, and I'm going off of just like the graphic. I keep looking down.
Yeah.
So YouTubers, I'm just kind of looking at the actual graphic on my iPad. So I'm
Okay,
like,
yeah.
Like I'm not reading whatever, how many pages, because that, you get lost in that, right? So,
Uh,
and by the way, nobody reads that stuff. We just look at the pretty photo. Okay.
well, I was going to say their, mantra or message of eat real food, I think is, I mean, I understand where they're going. I just think sometimes so literally, like any food you eat is technically real because we're
Mm.
not eating plastic and glass and
Mm.
things like that. So
I
I
mean,
feel
sometimes
like
we do.
it's a little contentious there, but when you dig into the dietary guidelines, I think this movement towards more strong language and firm language and guidelines that are advocating for minimally processed foods and more of, things that grow in the ground
Yeah.
or, animal proteins, fish and things of this that are less processed, less additives. I think that overall, and I'm not an attorney, so I'm not proposing some amazing opening statement here, Bob, but I think that is a pretty apparent message that's throughout these guidelines here that wasn't in the aforementioned pyramid or guidelines. So the issue here is, in reality, how does that happen? And that's what the intention is to inform policy. And, they have a statement somewhere in one of the documents. We're going to work with farmers better and work with our food systems and manufacturers to make these guidelines actually more implemented better for the people of this country. Anyways, I don't want to go on a political rant or anything, but nutritionally, I think there's some powerful messages here. I also found a lot of question marks as I went through some of the recommendations.
So let's also keep in mind, listeners, if you don't already know this, so the dietary guidelines, food guide pyramid, my plate, whatever you want to reference, they influence, kind of like Dina was saying, they influence how certain entities are actually fed or provided food, right? So school lunch programs,
Yeah.
prisoners, military, right? Prisons,
Yep.
that kind of thing. That's kind of the top end of this. And I say that for a reason, because for most individuals, in at least again in the United States, because this is the dietary guidelines for Americans, most individuals in the United States who are actually, let me just go on a limb here, because we're going to get a little heated under the collar with this episode, but I kind of feel like those of us who actually care about our health and are trying to do everything possible, we're not looking at the food guide pyramid, the dietary guidelines. We're not mimicking that or using that to guide our food choices. Now, the reason I say that, and I'm very confident in that, in addition to having worked in this field for over 30 years, is that what we're seeing is like when the first food guide pyramid came out, 1992, we didn't have there wasn't a lot of tech, right, Dina? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, you know what I mean? It was just kind of like floating around. Yeah, maybe like people are playing with it. Now we are so inundated with social media, with information, but with that also comes you have information at your fingertips on the carnivore diet, the paleo diet, keto, Atkins, high carb, low fat, low carb, high fat, right? What I'm saying is people who actually are trying to care more about their health, a lot of these people, our listeners and ourselves included, take our nutrition and our health into our own hands sometimes. And with that comes, which I'm going to kind of relate back at the end, this is my opening statement, is I do appreciate what our government is trying to do, but when it comes down to it, each and every one of us is N of one. Each and every one of us should actually have our food guide choices met via our physiological and biomarker health markers, right? So if this is, for example, come back to our opening where we cheered, we saluted our glasses, matcha and coffee, and I kidded with you putting butter in your coffee. Well, butter is kind of towards the top in the new dietary recommendations, right? So my point is it's not right for everyone, right? Now, again, we'll get into pros and cons and what we like, what we don't like. I do appreciate where they're going with this new inverted pyramid. What I think we just all have to remember is this is a guide, but I feel like most of the population that at least are listening to our podcast are not using this as a guide, right? because it is not directly influencing them unless they do have a child who participates in school lunch, if they have someone who is a prisoner in a prison, unless they have someone in the military, of which I kind of know how they get fed anyway, and it's really not like this. So my point is that I appreciate what our government is trying to do. I do feel like there's some positives here, but at the end of the day, listen, guys and girls, we have to individualize our nutrition based on our physiology, based on our biomarkers, based on our longevity goals. So with that all said, that is my opening remark. With that, Dee, I feel like we should kind of go back and forth, like pros, cons, pros, cons.
I mean, I was curious to, when have most people followed any of the dietary guidelines? But I know
Right.
in some clinical practices, they do actually use this as their foundation for recommending
Yeah.
how to eat.
Well, do you remember when we were going through school,
Yeah,
dietetic school? I mean, what were we taught? We were taught based on the food guide pyramid, right?
yeah,
And I would even say the language back way back in the days, was like, this is what you follow as a dietitian, right? It wasn't oh,
yeah.
hey, this is out here. But I just didn't feel like we had many choices back then either. Like, like that was
Mhm.
what was taught and that's what you did. But also, I think I agree with you. I feel like even the medical health nutrition field, they're going to latch on to these because it maybe it does provide that baseline education, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bob, would it be helpful, and even on that graphic that you're mentioning, which is super sometimes comical to
It
read what
is.
people are saying about the graphic,
Oh my
but
gosh, it is. Yeah.
do you want to kind of walk through some of the sections of the report or
Yeah.
organize this in a little
Let
bit
me
fashion?
start kind of
Yeah.
globally first. I just want to comment from me at least. I'm not gonna get nitpicky like, oh my gosh, there's a can of green beans. Like, listen, I'm not going to go to that level, right? I just want to let all our listeners know, like, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, there are 4 blueberries listed here. Why are there only 4? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So we're not going to like really be those people today. But I did want to mention one thing before, yes, to your question, Dee, but one thing before, when I first looked at this, like literally when whatever it was, January 9th, 11th, whenever it came out, right?
hmm
When I first looked at it, it's kind of like, the psychology cards like, oh, hey, look at this blot. What do you see? Right. Or what do you think of?
Oh, the Rorschach or
Yeah.
whatever that's called.
Yeah.
Rorschach.
I just call it the ink blot thing. Right.
Yeah.
But that's the game I was playing. I was like, okay, so I first saw that and I was like, oh, what's the first thing in my mind? You know, the first thing in my mind, Dee?
What's that?
Metabolic efficiency. I was like, oh my God, this looks a lot like optimizing blood sugar, doesn't it? I mean, there's really not a lot of nutrition periodization in here, but I was like, oh, I initially thought metabolic efficiency. Okay. So with all that said, yes, let's start. I think everyone has seen this before, the new inverted pyramid, the guidelines. So I don't know if we have to talk about like every single thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, let me start with you. Like, where do you want to start with this? I mean, obviously they're directing us towards the top, which is actually interesting. I'm sorry, because typically a pyramid has a base, right? It's like a house
Yeah.
foundation. You lay the foundation, you lay the good concrete, and you lay everything on top. As long as you have a good foundation, you're set, right? I think I'm just a little bit more analytical and logical because I'm looking at this inverted pyramid and I'm like, where's our foundation, right? And so do we have to look at it like upside down? I just,
I don't know,
I don't know
Bob.
why. I don't know why I'm
Well,
having a problem with that visually. Anyway,
I know. Well, and that is funny because, we think of pyramid. This is maybe just questioning how we think of shapes and the interpretation and
yeah,
what to do with that
yeah,
data. Because, I think top down when I look at this visual instead of bottom up, right? Which
yeah,
is classically, with the other former previous pyramids, it was flipped around. And so you would think you eat more of the stuff on the bottom
yes,
than
because
they,
that's what our government has taught us for how
Mhm.
many years? 30 plus
Yeah.
years. And
Yeah.
so do you think people might actually start at the bottom where the whole grains now live, right? And be like, because that's where they did live in the past.
Yeah.
But in the past, they had a huge section. Now they just have the tip. So do you think people will actually be like, oh, I'm going to start at the bottom again? Because psychologically, the government has already programmed us to look at a pyramid or now inverted pyramid in the same way. I don't know. I mean, only time
Yeah.
will tell, but
Well, I think they could have spent a little bit more cash on the graphic design, but whatever, we
you
might have
know,
some budget constraints right
that's
in the
right.
moment
That's
or
right.
in the
Yeah.
past few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder, maybe just starting a little bit there in terms of what we are seeing at the top of this visual, Bob, thinking of the changes in the protein recommendations. That
Yes.
might be a great place to start because it's a pretty stark contrast here or change
It's
from
huge.
previous guidelines.
Yeah, listen, I am not a political guy and I will never go into that world, but I feel like I want to kiss a few politicians. And by the way, everyone, scientists actually get all the data to supply to the next level of people, politicians, lobbyists, whatever, to actually put together the guidelines. So this isn't like all lobbyist politicians and it's not all scientists. It's always like a mix. That said, I kind of want to hug the scientists and some of the politicians. I'm like, oh my God, finally you're recognizing protein for what it needs to be. That is my biggest takeaway is thank goodness they're finally identifying protein because what have we been talking about for 30 years, D? Protein.
Yeah, that feels good to see it validated
It
now.
does. It does. And
Mhm.
I actually like, okay, this is kind of where we get into it since we're talking about proteins. I like the messaging. Some people have argued this and I really don't care, right? This is my argument. I love that they're just identifying protein. They're talking about lean, but they're also kind of putting in there like high fat dairy, full fat dairy. Like they're not saying just lean, just high fat or full fat. Like I personally actually appreciate that they are including all of it. They are including plant proteins, although you have to read more about that. You can't really see it on the new food guide pyramid or the dietary guidelines. But I do appreciate what they've done with like even the full fat. Now, will I eat full fat? No. You know why? Because my genetic markers do not support that. And that is why I'm not anti full fat dairy or meat or anything. But for me, genetically, because I've done that testing and I continue to, I know that that full fat dairy is not right for me because of my genetics. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. But I totally recognize it's fantastic part of someone else's nutrition plan based on their biomarkers, physiology, and genetics. So I love the messaging of most of the protein category. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the increase in the recommended amount, which is like 50 to 100% more than what
Yeah,
it was formerly, that
right.
is good. And they provide the reasons behind that.
Yep.
But I think the messaging of, high quality, nutrient dense, and trying to look at what that means for the person. And they still acknowledge like plant proteins
Hmm.
fit into this picture.
Yep.
They also talk a little bit here, Bob, about the cooking methods, kind
Mm,
of that reminder, fried kind of proteins to minimize or swap those out
yep.
for other cooking methods that might be or are more healthful. The emphasis on the nutrient density is something that you also see throughout the other recommendations.
Yes.
And so that's tying with like minimally processed or more whole food based proteins versus the overly processed.
For sure. And I think
Yeah.
what's interesting and funny in the same breath, D, is the healthy fats, right? I think you and I are both on
Yeah.
protein. Yes, great, great, great. And then even, listen, dairy's in there. Dairy's always going to be in there. I don't care if you like dairy, don't like dairy. I don't care if you're lactose intolerant or not. Listen, if you don't do it, you don't do it. Great. Right. That's your thing. This isn't to say anything about that. But what I thought was interesting was the healthy fats because
Hmm.
this is what I'm talking about. Like once we like the internet and all these diets and all these things, carnivore, keto, everything you name it has come along because it always ebbs and flows, as we know. I think it's funny. I have no opinion here, but I think I wanted to bring this up because it's funny to me that we have healthy fats as a it says protein, dairy, and healthy fats in the upper left corner of the inverted pyramid. And then, I look at the nice little graphics and I see, okay, avocado, and I see some eggs, and I see whole milk, and then I see walnuts, and then I see butter. And I'm like, this is really interesting because and I've already seen people just start attacking this. Like, why is butter in there? That's not a
Yeah.
healthy fat. Why don't we see? I guess that jar of oil is probably olive oil, I would imagine, right? But
Yeah.
here's my point. There is such a debate on fats these days that I think it's unfair to we do this anyway, but I still think it's unfair to classify healthy fats or healthy oils because we know most, except for like some trans fats, right? We know most monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated are necessary for life, for our cellular functioning, right? Now, in different amounts, and I think they were getting to that in the guidelines. But I just wanted to put on there that like some people will attack this because they see butter. Other people will attack it because they see dairy. And I just want to say that I actually appreciate that fats are in there. Whether or not healthy is the right word to put before fats, I could probably debate that. But I love the inclusion of all fats. That's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah. And yeah, I think in the guidelines too, there's the mention of beef tallow as a piece that you would lump under the healthy fats,
Yep.
and that then going with their recommendation to yet still limit your saturated fat to 10% of your calories. There's some confusion there because a lot of the fats they're saying are healthy or like higher protein is the way to go.
Right.
There's that kind of alignment we have to make in terms of if you're using these quote unquote healthy fats, how do you then also limit your saturated fat? I mean, I don't know a whole lot of people that are tracking their saturated fat carefully. They're usually
No.
looking at other metrics and things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Because usually it's total fat, right? I mean, that's what
yeah,
usually we see
exactly.
everyone do. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's funny, and this was in a lot on my feed, Bob, a lot of colleagues like, wow, they're using beef tallow and
I
butter as a
know.
healthy fat. What? But
I
if you
know.
actually look in the document, they do emphasize use of olive oil
Hmm.
a number of times. So I
Exactly.
think this is an example of where media or like you didn't read the whole thing. And I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't read word for word, but I did read quite a bit of the actual documents.
Yeah.
And like, they're not just saying eat butter
Exactly.
for your
But
fat or full fat dairy.
I mean, and it's funny, Dee, because I 100% agree with you. And I'm looking at the graphic again, like, and I'm like, the first where my eyes go, if I'm looking at that jar of potentially olive oil, again, I think it's olive oil, but it'd be nice if they
I'm going to
stuck an
say it
olive oil
is.
on it,
I
or
know they
something.
should have.
But our eyes go to the butter first because I feel like a lot of times we will want to demonize foods, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want to accept the foods. And I think that's what a lot of people are doing. In
That's
addition to
interesting.
that, listen, I'm just going to put up the argument right here with saturated fat. And because a lot of people draw saturated fat connections to cardiovascular disease, listen, everyone, times are changing with this. Like there is some amazing new research. Nothing is profound in terms of the results yet, but there's some amazing research being done right now in sat fat and I think in cardiovascular health. So I don't want us to demonize sat fat. I will say, I think a lot of people, let me go back on my bandwagon. In 1992, when the first food guide pyramid came out, and then, we started having this thing called the obesity epidemic, right? And I feel like a lot of people just blamed the food guide pyramid, like whole grains in specific, like, oh, everyone's eating whole grains and they're getting fatter and obese. I think it's and we've concluded, well, I think some people have concluded this and do support this, that it's really not the whole grains. It's the fact that people were not eating whole grains. They were eating refined grains. And then on top of that, they were probably having a lot of sugar and potentially a lot of fat. So it was like a cocktail that you've got 3 or 4 different ingredients in and just like made up the perfect storm. So I don't want to, kind of coming back to this whole thing, I don't want us to shame butter. I don't want us to shame beef tallow. I want us to, just like you said, like maybe let's read a little bit more in depth and say, oh, you know what? Yeah, what they're emphasizing all these fats, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
the positive message for me is that they're not just identifying 1 or 2 and then canceling out everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another connection there, Bob, we could transition to as well is the full fat dairy
Mm,
thing. Like, what about that? And issues around that. But I think part of that recommendation was also the effort to reduce added sugar
exactly.
recommendations. And
Exactly.
so when we go fat free on some of those products, like to make it palatable
Hmm.
for a lot of brains, and the way we're wired these days.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got added sugar to make up for the lack of fat now.
Right. Right.
And so that is to kind of address then the additives, added sugars, artificial
Yes.
ingredients to make that food, palatable or meet the previous recommendations.
Yeah, I feel like I really want to loop that conversation back in towards the end, right?
Okay.
Towards like the added
Hmm.
sugars and everything, because it's not on the pyramid or the inverted pyramid, but it's in the it's in the guidelines, right? So, but if you
Hmm.
just look at the pyramid, you're like, oh, where's the sugar? Where's all that stuff, right? So let's
Yeah.
let's let's loop that back in like as more of a concluding topic because I think it's super important. But I want to move to the right side of the top of the inverted pyramid, which is vegetables and fruits. One,
Hmm.
I love, okay, this is a minor thing. Call it as minor as you want, but typically, D, and this is wordsmithing things, but typically, D, if I'm going to talk to you about these colorful, abundant foods, normally, I would say fruits and vegetables, right? Is
Mm.
that pretty normal? And maybe not a lot of people think about this, but
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before,
right,
this flip
the
of
flip.
like, no, it's vegetables and fruit,
Yes,
not
right. And there's
it's
listen, when we periodize people's nutrition plans, listen, there's a time and a place for more fruits, less veggies, and then also more veggies and less fruit. So again, the dietary guidelines have nothing to do with nutrition periodization. Of course, we're recognizing that we don't expect them to. Listen, that's minor, but that's kind of the work we do with individuals. But here's my point. I love that they flipped it vegetables and fruits because one, it's going against the whole, it's not alphabetical anymore, right? And
mm,
it's not a tongue twister, but it's way different. So our brain has like fruit, oh, vegetables and fruits. So D, what say ye about this? Like what's the deal here?
there is recognition, the importance of gut health finally in our
Yes.
guidelines.
Yes.
And while fruit and fruits can support and provide fiber sources, I think the recognition that it is maybe, more on the vegetable emphasis side to provide the, food for the gut and to work with the importance of the gut microbiome and things. And so a little bit of that, like classically it's fruits and veg, but now trying to use some of the phrasing to also, I don't know, it's not subliminal, but whatever the other word might be, just
It
like
kind of is. Yeah, it's kind of a
emphasize
yeah,
how
yeah.
much more and then when they presented data like intake of fiber and vegetables versus refined grains, like it's very apparent we're
Yeah.
not even still actually meeting what
Right.
we need for these food sources
Yeah, yeah.
or intake guidelines. So I think part of it is just trying to emphasize, yeah, the importance of the vegetable
Yeah.
kinds of foods, right? And how that plays a role in our health.
Totally supportive. I love the gut health. So I love the protein, the fats, the gut health. With vegetables and fruits, I kind of picked up on this earlier, but on the graphic again, we see like fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
We see
Hmm.
frozen. We see canned. And again, I'm not going to comment on that, but you know, it's sending, I think, more appropriate messaging than what we've had in the past. So I do
Yeah.
appreciate what they've done here for sure. So as we go down in the inverted pyramid, we go from protein, dairy, healthy fats, vegetables, and fruits. And then as we start going down, which is the tip of the pyramid, which is actually the bottom, which is the smallest, which is really messing with my brain. Anyway, then there's actually a line, but this is a weird line, D, right? There's two lines on the whole food guide pyramid, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, dietary guidelines. On the top, which I don't know even why you need a line on the top, but then there's a line that actually separates protein, dairy, healthy fats, vegetables, and fruits, then line whole grains right
Yeah.
below it. I don't
Hmm.
understand the line. Like, why don't they just all communicate together and hang out?
Yeah.
But anyway, you see the bowl right above whole grains? I don't know what a bowl of what. I don't know what that is. Like, is that
That
oatmeal?
bowl,
Is that
I
rice pudding?
oh, on the
Is
with
it?
the little red stuff on top,
Is it?
or
Yeah.
the
What is that? Does anybody know?
because I
Listener,
thought
if you know what it is, can you just comment on our YouTube channel below? Because I have no idea what this is. Like, does it belong in whole grains or is
I
it a,
know my brain's like, that's white rice with
oh,
cranberries on top, but I did not understand what, I don't know.
let's come up with some things.
But
That's,
it's in the little fat section. So then I thought, oh,
it
it's
is.
cottage cheese with,
Oh, is it
um,
cottage
but that
cheese?
would
Maybe
be
with
up
some
by the
raspberries?
dairy, and there's already a yogurt in this
I
picture.
don't know.
So I have zero clue what that is.
Listen, if anybody knows,
Um,
let us know what it is because we have no. But the whole point is like I'm looking at the transition from like
yeah.
walnuts, butter, peanuts, bananas into whole grains, and I just don't know where that bowl fits. But anyway,
Okay. Well,
besides that comic relief section, whole grains, I see a big hunk of, I don't know, sourdough bread, as would
well,
be
oh,
my
that'd
guess.
be cool. We'll call
Yeah,
it sourdough. Sure.
sourdough, and then a bowl of, I don't know, rice,
Oats,
oats.
rice,
I don't
oats.
know.
I don't know because those look like little oats below on the
That's what I
little
was wondering.
trickles, the little pebbles.
It kind of looks like rocks, but okay, it looks like oats.
It could be spelt.
It could
I think
be.
it is.
Yeah, yeah.
The point is it's not in your Pop Tart
Yeah.
or it's not
Exactly.
a Pop Tart.
It is a whole grain. So interestingly, let me go back. One thing we don't see here are any food serving sizes, right? And
Mm.
I support that at least in the graphic because listen, serving sizes are bunk anyway, right? Okay, sorry, I'm going on record. Everything is there's inaccuracies with everything, but listen, serving size. I actually looked this up, D, because in reference to this, I wanted to know what a serving size. I said, what is one serving of a grain? Okay, so just humor me for a second. One
Okay.
ounce grain equivalents. Okay, one slice of bread, half a cup of cooked rice pasta cereal, 1 cup ready to eat cereal, one small 6-inch tortilla, 7 small crackers. It really depends on the cracker. One small
Yeah.
4.5-inch pancake. Who the heck eats a 4.5-inch pancake? Sorry.
Oh
And
no.
then three
Shoot.
cups of popped popcorn. Okay. My
Yeah.
point is this. I do like that we don't see any serving sizes on here. I love it to death. However, what I don't like is that whole grains are actually true whole grains can act the same in terms of providing fiber that feeds our gut, just like vegetables and fruits, right? So I'm not like, you guys all know me, like I'm all for periodizing grains and periodizing these things. And I just don't know if like really cutting down like true whole grains, we're not talking
Mm.
about refined processed carbohydrates. I'm talking about
Mhm.
spelt, barley, amaranth, things like whole grain with bountiful fiber that supports gut health, that can produce short chain fatty acids in our postbiotics. I don't know if I really agree with where we're going here with the whole grains, if it truly are whole grains.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying, Bob.
Yeah.
The former plate
Hmm.
visual, that did kind of show you a serving amount,
Kind of a
kind of, right?
reference.
Because it
Yeah.
was the
Yeah. Yeah.
plate of food divided by
Yeah.
these ratios. And that was like half your grains are whole or
Yep.
something like that.
Right.
But this is saying emphasize whole grains, but you're saying two. So it's cool. They're not like, oh, this is how much grain you have,
Yeah.
regardless. But also, whole grains do provide more minerals, more fiber.
Uh-huh.
And so to have this visual where it's a maybe teeny compared to what you're seeing in the other parts of
Yes.
this visual,
Yes.
that is maybe an issue. Is that kind
That's
of what you're
yeah, and that's kind of what I was getting at, 100%, right? And
okay?
that's kind of what I was going to reference was kind of the my plate. Listen, I don't agree 100% with my plate either, but I
Yeah.
feel like the message for whole grains in our new dietary guideline, just from the visual graphic, is going to significantly downplay the importance of nutrient density in true whole grains. I just kind of feel like people are going to start to really like throw the grains out and be like,
Yeah.
oh, you know what? No, they're not important, right? Well, and listen, we can have a very logical discussion on this. Like if you're eating bountiful veggies and fruits, you're probably getting a lot of the same minerals, fiber, antioxidants that whole grains will provide you. So yeah, I get it. But what do we know about most Americans, D? We don't eat enough veggies and fruits, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like the whole grains can kind of help us out there every so often with I'm
Hmm.
really listen, I'm going on my whole gut health soapbox here, right? I just fiber gut health. That's what I'm really focusing on here. Not
Yeah.
necessarily just from a carbohydrate standpoint, but from a gut health standpoint. That's just my feedback on whole grains. I mean, when I first saw that was my first
Yeah.
initial like, oh, okay, people
Yeah.
might get the
Yeah.
wrong message. Okay.
Yeah. I can
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't have all the visuals locked in my memory from all the previous dietary
Yeah.
guidelines and pyramid visuals or plate visuals, but I feel like this one also is just trying to put more, even though bread, this is another maybe point of contention with the guidelines is when they say limit your processed food or choose minimally processed is still like that, depending on what you read and what research you're looking at, that's still like, there's quite a range
I
of what we
know.
call
I know.
processing. And so the
Yeah.
bread, technically, even though if that's sourdough or a whole grain bread, is still processed.
Yeah.
But I think also they don't have the pictures. Maybe in the past they had a little bit of like some more processed
Hmm.
carb grain type foods.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I think this is maybe a half attempt there to tell you to emphasize whole grains. Yeah,
Yeah.
it, like you're saying, it's also taking away some of the other potential, all of this
Yeah.
will come back over and over to each person's needs and
Absolutely.
all of
Yeah.
that.
This is, listen, I'm gonna put myself in their shoes. Like, this is tough to do, right? Because you
Yeah.
have to create a graphic that most people will I mean, one, as I mentioned early in the podcast, most people, they're not gonna devise any of their nutrition based on this, right? They're just not, right? The other thing is, as a government institution, you have to develop a graphic that basically provides the information that you put in a however many page document that you use as a supporting document for the graphic, right? So it's tough. Like, I get it. Like, I would not want that job and say, how do we represent pages upon pages of what things that you've been referencing so far, right? That really
Mhm.
goes into more detail. How do you do that in a graphic? I don't know if you
Yeah.
do. Like, I mean, maybe they got closer on this. I don't know. I'm still confused about the whole inversion thing, but hey, it is what it is. I feel like just not many people are going to read the report like we did also. And that's cool, right? I don't think the government expects anyone to either. Not many
Yeah.
people, at least, except if you do this as a job or occupation, or if you just want, a good argument at a party or something. But let's get to the last. So to your point too, I think the less processed is a great message that has also come about this new one, as is artificial sweeteners, added sugars, right? So what messaging do they put around that whole category?
Well, I think it's something along the lines like avoid all added sugars
Exactly.
practically, right? And they
They
even changed it for children,
they did.
right?
4 and under,
Yeah.
they say 0 added sugars. Love that to death, by the way, as a parent. I think it
Well,
actually
I'm
should be a little bit
feeling,
higher of an age, but hey.
I was just joking, Bob, like I fail, I think. I mean, I don't know anyone doing 0 added sugar.
Good luck, right? I mean, maybe you're on carnivore and doing it. I don't know. I mean, maybe you're on an island somewhere. But anyway, I think
Anyways, yeah.
messaging for added sugars, this is one thing I love to death. I just want to hug this, is like, minimize added. I'm hugging my iPad right
You're
now. I
hugging your
just
little inverted pyramid.
inverted pyramid. Oh, wait, I'm gonna turn it upside down. Now it's, oh, look. If you turn it upside down,
Oh,
D, doesn't it make more sense? Look at
interesting.
YouTubers. Hey, if you're on YouTube right now, check out what I'm doing. It makes total sense, right? Like, think about it. We start with abundant protein, throw in some dairy, healthy fat, some veg, fruit, and then,
Hilarious,
oh,
Bob.
this makes sense. Okay, sorry.
Metabolic efficiency
Well, it
is
is.
protein,
Veg and
fiber,
fruit. Yeah, exactly.
color,
And fat.
and
Literally.
that. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah. Protein, fiber, fat. That is literally what metabolic efficiency training is and has been for 20 plus years. Anyway, yeah.
Bob, by the way, they forgot to put a little water glass
I
in that
know, I was
pyramid,
wondering
but
where the hydration is.
maybe the water glass should be what the pyramid is standing on.
Oh, that would be good. Oh, like a little
I
balancing
don't
act.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not a graphic designer,
I
so
don't
that,
know.
or it should be like the in the background of that whole thing. But
Something. Maybe a couple of drops of water somewhere. I don't know. I think they
yeah,
oopsed on that one. Oopsie.
there was
Added
something else.
sugars. We're talking about added sugars.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely a huge change.
And I love it. I love the messaging. Listen, everyone. Yes, that is one of my top messages, has been for years, is like reduce added sugars as much as possible when it makes sense. Like for
Hmm.
athletes, time and place, right? We know time and place. If you're not an athlete in competition, maybe you're just recreational. Listen, I still think all of us should try to have minimal added sugars. Minimal. What that means to you, it's kind of up to you. Of course, like the American Heart Association does have recommendations for total added sugars for male and female, and that's 24 grams for females and 36 grams for males of added sugar per day. But that may change. Who knows, right? But that said, I think, back to my thing, I love the fact that they are emphasizing reduced added sugars. I love the fact that they brought up artificial sweeteners. Score one for dietitians.
There's some interesting stuff in the 90-page report too, Bob.
Yeah.
I was just laughing at the section. It's very small,
Yeah.
but it's talking about older
Oh,
adults.
yeah.
And they didn't
Like
define what
us.
older is, but acknowledging that nutrient needs change.
Oh, okay.
There's a section in there too with regarding vegan and vegetarian diets.
Huh?
I mean, some of this stuff is not brand new to this set of guidelines, but I like that they're appreciating a little bit more that it's not one dietary pattern. And there's this language to remind you to work with a health professional, figure out
Yes.
what your needs are. So even though we have this framework, it definitely, and this is like the most obvious statement of all, like how do you apply this to your own self and figuring out what's right for you? But nonetheless, that wasn't a message we needed to say over and over.
What I'm hearing is we're going to summarize this in a few minutes, but I'm hearing also that
Yeah.
they're acknowledging older individuals. So we're talking about health longevity, like going through the lifespan, improving health span. Not that they're identifying that. We're also identifying different potential eating behavior, such as vegan and vegetarian.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that. We're calling out reducing added sugars as much as possible. We're calling out try to really, I don't know what their language is, Dee. I forgot what I read about the artificial sweeteners. Do you remember, are they talking about deleting, or is it just like really being cognizant and reducing artificial
Oh,
sweeteners?
I think it's pretty clear
Okay.
to avoid
Okay.
artificial anything,
Artificial anything,
colors,
dyes, color. Yeah, yeah,
sweeteners,
yeah.
all those
Okay.
things. Yeah,
Love to death. Again, yeah, I think there's, I feel like if we're at the point, well, let me ask you, Dee, are we at the point where we can summarize now?
sure.
Okay.
Hmm.
I feel like my summary is I really appreciate the potential messaging that they are doing now with the updated food dietary guidelines, right? I don't agree with everything. I never will. Nobody ever will. But I really appreciate some of the messaging. One, I think I just get so excited because my summary is turn this new dietary guideline upside down. Whoops, hold on. Hold on, YouTubers. And what we see is a lot of what we've been doing for 20, 30 years. And really, my summary is I'm finally seeing some government recommendations that support metabolic health, right? And metabolic health meaning supporting optimizing blood sugar, optimizing insulin control through food. Is it perfect? No. Is anything perfect? No. But I love the progress that has been made, and for that, I will actually go on record saying I do appreciate everything that everybody has put into reforming these guidelines. That's my summary.
Yeah, I echo a few of those comments too, Bob. I mean, the trend to where we're going, looking at disease rates, what's going on in our country. Again, that's a whole complicated our healthcare system and how we're set up. So that's different. But the guidelines themselves with where we're headed, trending the right direction, I think. Of course, we've been working in nutrition for a number of years, so it's also things that align with our
Mhm.
people that we serve when we see health improvements.
Yep.
But I think, like you said, this can't be perfect and a solution for all, but it is a representation of guidelines that do better support the health of an individual.
Correct.
So that is a very positive direction to head. And I'm sure we could talk an hour about all the problems that are in, but that is a side conversation.
Yeah,
and
and I think I wanted to play kind of the half glass full, right? And provide the positives of this. Like, what can we actually be positive about with this and actually use like in our daily nutrition, or other dietitians recommending things to their clients or athletes. Like I just wanted to respect that. Of course, you can pick apart anything, but I think it's more difficult to look at the pros instead of always focusing on the cons.
Yeah.
And with that, speaking of which, okay, listeners, head on over to our Patreon account, right? Patreon community, patreon.com/ISN podcast. I kind of feel, Dee, that we're going to have a lot of interaction on this episode for sure, right? Based on what we talked about. So we want you to go over there, join our free community. If you don't already have an account there for our free community, and let's engage. Like, what do you think of these new dietary guidelines? What are the pros? What are the cons? Do you follow any of this? Do you see where it could help you or maybe not help you? Let's just interact a little bit.
And that is a great place to interact with us for sure, Bob. And always can opt to support the show there with an upgrade to one of the other tiers, which is awesome. We greatly appreciate that. You're going to have to keep your iPad upside down.
I think
now
I will have to. I'm just going to invert it anyway. I'm going to invert the
For
inversion. So I'm going to revert it.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right? If you invert something, do you revert
Reverse invert. I don't know.
Huh. Well,
Revert.
Hey, if you know the answer to that question,
Okay.
listener, put that in our free community chat also. All right, everyone. We so appreciate you hanging out with us, and hopefully you learned a ton from this podcast. We're really looking forward to 2026 and just bringing you some awesome episodes. Stick with us here. It's going to be a fantastic year. We love that you're with us. Thank you so much for all your support, and we will see you on the next podcast.